There's a lot of racism against Black Americans. A lot of people are wondering, what are things that you can do in order to help the situation? There's a lot of good answers to that. I'm just going to go over one answer to that question today, and I'm going to go over what the research behind the answer is and what experts have to say about it. So, the thing I'm going over today is confrontation. You can help reduce the amount of racism in the world by confronting people about the racism. Confrontation doesn't mean getting into a physical fight. It means speaking up about it. So, Professor Michelle Lamont, who is a professor of African American Studies and Sociology at Harvard University, led a team of sociologists to study people who are marginalized across the world and their responses to racism. Professor Lamont argues that there are different levels of change that you can make. She says that people do a lot in America is that we talk a lot about macro level changes. Macro level changes are big changes, meaning, we're getting laws passed. For example, the Civil Rights Act is a macro level change. It's a big change at the government and national level where laws are implemented to create change. We don't talk as much about micro level changes that you can make at an individual level. And she says the changes that you make at an individual level actually change the conditions around you and help to allow macro level changes to happen. For example, she gives an example about how a lot of rights that women have those rights are now guaranteed by laws and regulations that have come into play. These are macro level changes. But part of the micro level changes that helped make that happen was that individual women spoke up about inequalities and helped to pave the way for a climate where that could happen. One micro level change that Professor Lamont likes to talk about is confrontation again. So, confrontation is actually the tactic used most commonly by African Americans in order to handle racism. This response is actually enabled by the civil rights movement and also a lot of other cultural factors. So she says that African Americans who are confronting are doing things right. Through these exchanges, things change. In addition, another piece of work that I took a look at was this literature review called Bystander Anti-Racism by Dr. Jacqueline Nelson and her colleague. This piece of work is a literature review, and a literature review is not a study. It's not a study in and of itself. Instead, what they do in a literature review is that they look for what studies have already been done on a topic, and they summarize these studies, so kind of like a book report of all the other studies that have been done. So here are some important points that I hope to encourage you to that will help encourage you to take a stand and confront racism. So first of all, they note in the literature review that there is a real and positive change that you do in the world when you confront racism. However, one major reason people don't speak out about racism is because they often wonder whether speaking against racism will improve anything. I'm here to tell you that it does. So one important thing Dr. Nelson states in her literature review is that confronting racism makes it hard to be publicly racist because racist things will get called out. You might point out correctly, well, just because someone's not racist publicly doesn't mean they aren't privately racist. That is true, but making racism publicly intolerable may actually make people feel less racist. One study by Blanchard in 1994 found that just by hearing people condemn racism, that actually caused the people who were listening to have more anti-racist opinions. And when someone says something racist, it might make most people around them feel uncomfortable. But if no one actually says anything about it, then the person who heard the racist comment feels like, oh, maybe most people actually agree with the racist comments because no one spoke up. That creates something called a false consensus. Even though most people don't agree with it, because no one spoke up about it, there's a false consensus that's accepted. This actually allows the person who made the racist comment to say it again in the future and not change their mind about it. On the other hand, if everyone around you has an attitude that racism is not acceptable, that type of environment will actually lead people to have less racist attitudes. So speaking out against racism makes people less likely to say or do racist things. And when the number of racist things goes down, that causes everyone to actually be less racist because their opinions and attitudes will change. Also, if you're a member of a different race than the person getting attacked, I especially encourage you to confront, because if you stand up, you might be more likely to make the attacker feel guilty and also feel self-criticism. Furthermore, hearing racist things all the time just sucks. Lowe and her colleagues found in 2007 that people in the workplace that hear racist things often suffer negative mental health effects. Some also make the case that standing up to racism has a positive health effect in terms of blood pressure. I'm a little skeptical about the specific study that they did, but I agree with the point overall. African Americans actually have some of the poorest health outcomes of any ethnic group in the United States, and they have high levels of chronic diseases. And one widely accepted theory for this is, or actually widely proposed theory about this, is that African Americans suffer so much stress and burden from being a marginalized community that this toll on their mental health actually translates to poor physical health outcomes. So, speaking out against racism at the personal level is a great way to fight racism. So this is an example of how to approach the situation. First of all, you need to make sure that you're physically safe. Once you're physically safe, go ahead and ask the person who did or said the racist thing so just go ahead and you can repeat what they said back to them and ask them about it, or you can ask them to clarify what they meant. After you do that, go and they're indeed making a racist comment. Go ahead and state to them in a calm but confident and firm way, hey, what you said is racist and it's also hurtful. That person deserves the same respect that we all do. You're going ahead and naming their behavior and letting them know it's a racist behavior, and you're naming its effect. Also, you're doing this in a calm and diplomatic way, because in 2010, a study by Hires actually found that being mean when you're saying this doesn't actually help anything. It actually makes the other person more likely to get into a fight with you. So in 2019, my friends and I went to the West Indian Day Parade, which is held during Carnival on Labor Day in Crown Heights, Brooklyn every year. It's a really wonderful event. I really encourage you to go one day, filled with like lots of dancing, really cool floats, and really good food. And on our way back, a man on the subway began to speak to us. This is my very poor illustration of what happened. This is crudely drawn pictures of me, my friend, he's actually black, and the man who we ran into. So the man actually lived on Eastern Parkway, which is where the parade runs in front of, and he was remarking how he was leaving the area because it was actually really loud. The conversation was going fine until he made a certain comment that was very racist.
Yeah, it's just so loud. I need to get away, which is why I'm leaving. Everyone's dancing and they get so loud out there, and the music playing. It reminds me of like King Kong, like the music when they capture the white women.
So you're saying that black people celebrating and having a parade is like gorillas capturing white women?
Like the music and everyone out there reminds me of King Kong and the gorillas, you know? Like capturing white women for sacrifice, and they have all the dramatic music.
What you said is racist.
Racist? What?
You literally just compared black people enjoying themselves at a parade to gorillas kidnapping white women. That's racist.
Okay, sorry, but
I don't want to talk to you anymore. So I didn't say anything during that encounter. My friend immediately defended himself. My friend is a confident man who will stand up for things he thinks is right, but you can't imagine that for many people, it might be hard to do that in the moment. Maybe the person is shy, maybe they're introverts, and I know it might be hard for you to do so too. It's going to be uncomfortable and it can be scary, but when you speak up, you are changing the world in a real and meaningful way by making it less racist. So we're going to go back to Dr. Yuan to talk to her about what it's like to handle these types of situations.
All right, so let's talk about how we feel about this. So Alan, let's talk about what are some emotion at that moment when you felt you were not speaking up at that moment for your friends. What does it feel like?
Well, in the moment when it was happening, one of the things I'm a little ashamed about is actually that I wasn't processing the event quickly enough for me to realize that what the man was saying was racist. I was like struggling to process the event quickly enough. And it wasn't until my friend said it was that the man said it was racism that I then was like, oh, that is racist. And so I wasn't even able to process that quickly enough. One of the things that my friend mentioned to me is that the reason why is that your past experiences. The reason why I didn't pick up on it and he did more quickly is that your past experiences help you be more perceptive of what is happening back then. So, for example, I might go outside and hear a couple of birds singing. I go, okay, that's a couple of birds. And another person might go outside and then they won't hear any birds singing because they're paying attention to other things. But for a bird watcher might be able to go outside and then name you the individual Latin names of all the birds that are singing. And so I wasn't in a place to be able to, I didn't process that quickly enough to be able to say something. But even after he said it was racist, I couldn't find the words in that moment. I felt such a shame after that that this thing that I always that we always been taught about is bad, is hurtful, and is racist to everyone. Like I wasn't able to go ahead and speak up in that moment.
Wow. So well, thank you for the reflection. It sounds like it will be really helpful for many of our Asian American community. And so it sounds like it's like sort of depends on our past experience. It kind of bring up to the awareness or in the conscious level that like bring us to the attention for us to act at the time, especially when this happened and the racism is happening to people around us. I guess like what could be really helpful would be like, what do you think could be helpful? Like if things can, do it again, and what do you wish to you have changed?
I wish I had. I wish I had been able to kind of process it quicker, and I wish that I had gone and said something in the moment to support my friend. Even though my friend is very competent and then outspoken, he spoke up for himself. It would have been more powerful if my friend had been had other voices supporting him too in that moment. And so if and then that way the person would know that like, hey, I'm what I'm saying is not only is not like someone telling him that what he's saying is racist is not only one person's opinion. There are others coming in and being like, hey, that what you said is racist now, okay. That would be a more powerful message.
I see. This is really helpful. And I know that Alan, your friend has a note that share with us about the feeling and what could be helpful for Asian American to be supportive for the Black American in the community. Would you share with us with his permission?
Sure. Yeah, so my friend's statement is this. I think it is also worth mentioning that even though you were not vocal during the incident, you still supported me by speaking about it shortly after and taking a stance. You acknowledged that what he did was wrong instead of metaphysically disappearing from the scene like the other friend who could not even stomach watching me defend myself. I think if you had spoke up for me like that, it would have been amazing for many of the reasons you've already highlighted. However, for the non-confrontational or shy allies, a simple acknowledgement of the issue does go a long way. If that ally can later build up the courage and start to publicly display their support, even through body language, it becomes powerful and effective.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. So it sounds like it will be really helpful if we are able to stand up and make the acknowledgement that racism indeed happened, and we are there to support them. Wow. Thank you so much. This is really helpful.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to try that situation again, except that this time I'm going to confront. I'm also going to check in with my friend to see if he's okay at the end of it, and then recognize that the event was racism. One of the biggest challenges that that Black Americans face is that a microaggression or a racist incident will happen to them, and then no one will say anything about it. They almost feel like, oh, like they were the only person that saw it, and then everyone else is like, pretending not to see it, or doesn't say anything about it. But what does help that person out a lot is that after the racist event, if you weren't able to confront, if you go up to that person and say, hey, that what happened was not okay, and that was racist, and check in with them, that person who had the racist event happen to them is going to feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's just so loud. I need to get away, which is why I'm leaving. Everyone's dancing, they get so loud out there, and the music's playing. It reminds me of like King Kong, like the music when they capture the white women.
What do you mean?
Like the music and everyone out there reminds me of King Kong and the gorillas, like capturing white women for sacrifice.
Hey, what you said is racist and hurtful. He deserves the same respect that we all do.
Okay, sorry, but
we don't want to talk to you anymore. Dude, you alright? What that guy said was super racist and not cool. I'm with you. Thanks, man.